Good morning, Prof. Jager and Prof. Mpofu. We are here to have a discussion regarding the publication that we submitted to Journal of Transdisciplinary Studies. I am going to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Christopher Rwodzi. I've been a lecturer for the past 15 years. And I'm going to give this opportunity to my colleagues, my supervisors for my PhD thesis, who are going to introduce themselves as well before we start opening up the discussion. Profs, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Christopher. My name is Professor Lizette Jager, and I was the supervisor for this study and have worked together with both colleagues for a very long time.
Thank you so much, Lizette and Christopher. I'm Professor Nhlanhla Mpofu. I was also a student of Prof. Jager.
Okay, thank you, my supervisors. Let me go directly into the focus of our discussion today. The article that we published in the Journal for Transdisciplinary Studies is the innovative use of social media for teaching English as a second language in South African schools, particularly township schools. That's the article that we published. We understand that this article has received attention from many readers who have used it in many different ways. But before we go into the article, I want to give a brief background of how we came up with this article. This article is a product of my PhD thesis that was completed in 2018 under the supervision of the two supervisors who are in front of me. What prompted me to undertake this study was the developments that were taking place in high schools as technology was fast developing and teachers were not coping with the skills required. Also understanding that resources were a challenge in township schools. By township schools, I mean those schools located in places like Atteridgeville, Soshanguve, Mamelodi, in Pretoria. I'm referring to Pretoria, or Tembisa in the Midrand there. So yes, technology was coming, but those schools were facing problems because they don't have access to digital devices, and the teachers are also not properly trained to use technology in the teaching of English as a second language. So that prompted me to undertake a study to investigate what strategies, what mitigating measures are they using in order to use technology for the benefit of learners, considering that the nature of those environments, some informal settlements do not have lights, do not have access to libraries, they don't have the digital devices. So as a result, I undertook to take this study, and my experience of teaching in high schools also showed that teachers were struggling in the integration of technology in the teaching of English first additional language or even home language in those locations. So this is what prompted me to undertake the study, and then upon completion we developed this article as a product from my study. So with this background, I want my supervisors to add on to what I've said regarding the background of the paper. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you. Yes, perhaps it's prudent to mention that both colleagues, Prof. Mpofu and Dr. Rwodzi, were PhD students of mine, and this all falls within a bigger project that I have been busy with for the last probably 8 years on sourcing and creating apps for language teaching. So the aims here were certainly to see what was going on in schools and where the gaps were and how one could address this. So for Dr. Rwodzi, it was certainly about seeing what pre-service teachers and teachers in the field were currently doing, and what they needed to raise their practice from merely using technology to actually integrating technology in a sound pedagogical way. And both students have since gone on to do stellar work in similar areas. And I'm very proud of both of the students and proud of the work that has come out of this. Thank you.
Just to add on that, Prof, is that our work, Christopher, Lizette, and my work, we do not focus on the deficit orientation to language learning and language teaching. We acknowledge the urgency that the teachers in resource-constrained schools bring with them. Our focus is understanding or examining or exploring that as long as the pedagogy of language teaching is in place, a teacher is able to teach in any environment as long as they are empowered to be reflective practitioners, as long as they are empowered to be agents of change. So we have continued on that trajectory from my work to Christopher's work, to Prof. Lizette's work. We are still continuing to try and understand how language education, language research, second language acquisition located in the global south, not from a deficit point of view, but from an asset-based pedagogy, how it's happening and how it continues to happen. So we are unshamefully focusing on that as scholars in language education. Thank you.
Absolutely. And if I can then perhaps just highlight the aims and objectives, particularly of Dr. Rwodzi's article, Christopher's article, as Nhlanhla has said, to inform practice, but certainly also to transform practice using the experience that already exists in the room. Particularly focusing on languages, home language and first additional language. The dire need in South Africa is in first additional language. And also addressing the urgency of digitalization in the post-Fourth Industrial Revolution context. So to look at transformed practice, one needs to move away from merely the technical side of using technology to the educational side, the pedagogical side of integrating technology. And this was one of the biggest aims, particularly in the Southern African region. Also with a focus to develop materials, learning and teaching materials for integrating technology and using digital texts across all languages. Since this particular article, the projects have moved on to include Sepedi and isiZulu and Afrikaans, and we saw that there is a dire need for apps, particularly in African languages. There's a plethora of apps available in English, not only general education apps, but particularly language apps. Thousands to choose from, but nothing for the African languages. So that is where the need is. Thank you. Over to you, Prof. Mpofu.
Our audience in this work that we are doing includes the in-service teachers themselves, the pre-service teachers themselves, researchers in this field. Another interesting element that we are bringing in our research is also learners who get to consume or who get to use those apps. But overall, our audience are those that are interested in the preservation of language through technology. Those who are interested in enhancing the pedagogical usage of technology in the acquisition of languages, both as mother tongue or second language. Just as Prof. Lizette has highlighted, the focus is no longer only on second language acquisition. We have moved also to include mother tongue instruction, which is in itself groundbreaking because we do not have a lot around this. Our audience also is I think this is Prof. Lizette's domain, the creators of the different apps who are able to conceptualize our pedagogical and our instructional needs into an app. So we have a broad spectrum of the audience, but they come together to formulate an app that enhances language learning, language acquisition for a learner located in South Africa who is multilingual and exists in a super diverse environment.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Prof. And in addition to what the two professors have said, this article also intended to inform policymakers in the Department of Higher Education,
yes,
Department of Basic Education, regarding how they could shape, develop, or extend the policy to cover digital skills in the teaching and learning of English as a second language. And like Prof. Jager mentioned, to extend to other languages, that includes African languages, to avoid us lagging behind. It was also presented at a conference, HELTASA Conference in 2021, and researchers and attendees of the conference were able to listen to this article and the visions it has. So the target is growing and we want to make it broader. I think I will explore more of this when we look at the future of the article. But for now, I want to ask Prof. Jager if you have additional information regarding our aims, target audience on the article.
Well, I can add perhaps the mention of presenting the paper at HELTASA, I think, was absolutely timeless, because HELTASA is working very hard towards transformation in the higher education sphere and doing excellent work there in terms of student support, student access. And these are our future teachers also that will go into the schools that we are targeting with our article. So that was very important. And also, the article was also very timeless and important in the recent pandemic, because most scholars and researchers and teachers started looking around for resources and how to adapt when we all had to work online. And this article just preceded that, and the follow-up articles consolidated the knowledge that we brought in this article. And I think that's also what made it so valuable, because it was very important at that moment for a lot of people, a lot of scholars and researchers and teachers to get that information. And from that, what we are trying to achieve now is to not go back to pre-COVID times, to really make sure that that understanding of the pedagogical integration of technology has taken root, and that we don't go back to merely focusing on technology as the end product, because it's certainly not about technology. It's it isn't important whether you teach someone to use Kahoot or whether you teach someone to use Flipgrid or whether someone can use Peer Deck. There are so many apps available. They all do wonderful things, but that is not the end product. The end product is critical thinking, group work, problem solving, design thinking processes. That is your end product. And then we do it through technology. Technology then becomes the tool for a pedagogically sound approach to teaching languages. And I think that's where the success may lie in this particular article and the other articles that we produced together. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's a very important point to highlight, Prof, that the focus is not on technology itself, but the focus is what technology can do in terms of enabling, creating an enabling environment for language teaching and language learning. And the pushback that we always have with the integration of technology in language learning is that it's going to take time out of the of what I focused to do on that day or in that lesson. But the way you have explained it does highlight that it is important that technology is brought in to illuminate the interaction that we want to be there in the classroom, the communication, the assessment, everything that makes up a language class. Technology is able to bring that up. And this, the article does capture that in a very inquiry-based, in a very scientific, in a very well-reasoned and philosophized way. And I think that's one of the many reasons why it has been successful.
Yeah, and Christopher, with your permission, I want to add one more thing. I think also what makes this article successful and what made the PhD study successful is the conceptual framework.
Yes.
This is not something that we just pulled from the air and we made a replica of other studies. Christopher really thought very hard about conceptualizing a framework and working from a theoretical perspective that would really, really produce quality work. And he was successful in that. And the same goes for Nhlanhla in her studies. And in my projects also, we've developed a combined conceptual framework that includes language theories, technological theories, adoption theories, and pedagogy in general. And I think that because it has such a strong foundation in theory, it is very successful. So that's important to know also. And through that, we have to keep reminding ourselves through the work that we do that we are preparing our learners and our teachers and our future citizens. We are preparing them to function in the modern world. That should be the purpose of all our teaching, is to prepare the child to function in the modern world. And our modern world is a technological world. So we have a duty. We are compelled and mandated, and also mandated by the Department of Education and Higher Education, to incorporate ICTs in our teaching. And we are proposing just that we do that in a pedagogically sound way. And I think that's why Christopher was so successful.
Thank you. It's quite exciting, and I'm happy with the progress that we are making. I think from my side as well, the experience of interacting with teachers in schools and as a teaching practice supervisor, I've visited schools, observed pre-service teachers in action. That has opened a lot of opportunities, I must say, at this stage, to see that how they integrate technology in their teaching, and what is the impact of technology integration to their teaching. What is the end result? What is the quality of the teacher that we are producing for the future? So this topic became very scintillating at a time when those pressures were landing on the teachers, considering that they are in resource-constrained environments where they don't have resources. But that is not the focus. Yes, like you said earlier on, Prof, they don't have resources, but what is it that they can do? What initiatives are they taking in order to keep themselves on the game? So this is this was part of the process. Now at this stage, I want us to move on to the future of the publication. The future of the publication, it was published in 2020. There were articles that followed. The first one that followed, I think, in 2021 was remote learning as an option by resilient English teachers in Gauteng province constrained secondary schools. This article, as a follow-up, was exploring options that teachers could take after the pandemic in 2020, 2021. So teachers could not have contact with their learners. So as a result, they were forced to look for options, and this online learning became an option. But there were still challenges there, challenges like lack of resources, network, and skills as well, that even if they were to connect, you will find that either learners don't have the skills or the teacher does not have pedagogic skills to use to teach online. So that became a requirement. So we developed this article to create opportunities for teachers and how they can navigate, how they can work around with technology to deliver quality language education at that time. We did not also end there. This also extended, I think the project expanded to a book chapter that was published early this year by Multilingual Matters, Born Digital Text in the Language Classroom. Chapter 11 is our chapter, which also explores how the impact of digital text on the learning and teaching to learners who have been born in this digitized environment. What adaptations are they making? What opportunities are they taking advantage of? How are teachers making use of those opportunities to teach language skills to in preparation for the century, for the learners to function in this digital century? So more research is also going on, and we wish that if we could extend this to secondary schools by having workshops or teachers who have access to the article to learn more about how they can make use of technology, social media to teach and extend the classroom to beyond the four walls that we know in the schools. So learners can literally keep discussing academic matters even after school. These are suggestions on the table that could be promoted by both the Department of Basic Education and Higher Education. Some of this work from the articles has been used for pre-service teachers training as well, making recommendations and providing guidelines to use on the social media application in education for language. I think for now, let me take it to my colleagues. Prof. Jager, can you say something?
Thank you. I think just to end off, maybe one more comment. I think it's important to note that what we did also find in this study and through the subsequent articles is that there is a lot of expertise existing in the schools. Yeah. And teachers are actually, in fact, very resilient. And it's fabulous to see what they actually are doing to address their shortcomings in their context. So even though teachers are working in severely research-constrained environments, they have very innovative practices, and they are achieving a lot of success. And I think it's important for colleagues and scholars to read this article so that they can see what is actually being done and what is actually possible, despite the particular context that people are working in.
Oh, okay. Yes. I just have a question for Prof. Lizette. Prof. Lizette, from the time you started with your scholarship in technology and integration into second language teaching and acquisition, and to the point we have gotten to in this article in 2020, 2021, and now an article in Multilingual, a chapter in Multilingual Matters, what have been the highlights? What have you seen as the main highlight that we can hold on to, especially as it relates to teacher agency in second language teaching and acquisition in multilingual spaces?
Well, the main highlight for me is just to see the opening up of the mind. You must remember, I am not young anymore, and I have lived through a number of eras or ages where things have changed, and things have changed slowly, and we've had many challenges. But what I'm seeing currently is an open-mindedness to change and adaptation across the board, and the move from the individual to the collaborative and the collective is strong. The post-decolonisation movement is strong. Placing leadership among African scholarship is strong, yes. And a lot of good work is happening there. And I'm just happy to be part of it. And of course, on a personal level, the highlights have always been when my students have performed so well. I heard a long time ago someone said, "How do you measure success?" And I think it was maybe Socrates, or under correction, who said, when the student surpasses the master is successful. Yeah. So when my students surpass me, I know that my work is completed. Congratulations to you both, and thank you for this opportunity to talk about the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Do you want to add something, Prof. Mpofu?
I also think that there is an opportunity for us to draw in the student voice, the learner voice, in the type of research that we are doing. We have focused on teachers, but there's also an opportunity for us to focus on the learner voice, especially as the users and consumers of the apps and the pedagogical arrangements that we make in our classroom. So I think as we are talking about the future, the learner voice is going to feature very prominently in our research.
That's a valid point, very important point, I agree.
Thank you very much. That means we still have a chance to explore that in detail and take up another project, perhaps.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Looking forward to that.
Yes, in our technology transformation agenda. I think we are coming to the end of our discussion. I want to start by, perhaps there is one of us who still has a question or something that you need clarification.
No,
I want to wind up and close. So, first and foremost, I want to thank the management for the Journal of Transdisciplinary Studies for publishing our article. We really appreciate.
Yes.
I don't know. We chose you, and you also accepted us. Yes, you chose us. Thank you, Prof. So we really appreciate for giving us that opportunity. I think we will also send more work to them in our future projects. I also want to thank my two supervisors for working very hard, supporting me in this project, and now we see the fruits of our energy. And I want to say, please let us continue to work together as a team. We are a strong team, and I hope this will take us to another level.
Yes,
absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Well said. Thank you very much.
Thank you.